Oof. All right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. This is the 2019 Halloween special live stream. And I'm going to tweet it out right now. Hopefully, people can see this. I'm taking questions. I'm taking comments. I'm taking ghost stories to my email, razimus@gmail.com, and also to my Twitter, Razimus, at Razimus on Twitter. I have to use this new streaming encoding software. I just made sure it didn't echo. We will see if people can see it. It was working when I tested it out. This is the first time I've ever live streamed with OBS Studio, so check that out if you want to know what that looks like. But thank you for joining us to the Happy Halloween special. Questions, comments, ghost stories, send to Razimus on Twitter, or you can email razimus@gmail.com. I have received a few in advance, and I have plenty of stories to talk about. I'm going to react to the Ghost Adventures latest episode, Curse of the Harrisville Farmhouse, the house that inspired the movie The Conjuring. I got confused between the movie The Conjuring and the movie The Possession. Two totally different movies, so I wasn't too familiar with the Harrisville Farmhouse. But I am familiar with Ed and Lorraine Warren. But I have to make sure people are here. Yes, the chat is not up, but you can comment on Twitter at Razimus. You can send messages. You could even check out my Instagram, ghost.hunting on Instagram, or my email, razimus@gmail.com. I guess I could take off these headphones and... Whew. Yes, for Halloween this year, I am a Ghostbuster. I thought it was a pretty fun costume. Got the old ghost trap here. My favorite is this, the old ghost meter. Ooh, there's a ghost right here, according to this. Very funny. I'm going to be talking about these fake ghost devices from the movies, and then real ghost hunting devices. I am a real ghost investigator in real life, which is also why I decided to go for the old ghost hunting theme. And here's the old ghost catcher, and it does close by itself. It's pretty nice. We have the ghost catcher here. It's a fun little prop. It's pretty detailed for just a Halloween store as a costume piece, Guess you got to close it yourself, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm going to talk about these Hollywood props for the Halloween costume, and then I'm going to be talking about the real things, the real ghost hunting devices. Here's a couple of them. We're going to be talking about ghost stories. This is the Halloween special. I just borrowed this from the front porch for the old Halloween special. Thank you for joining us. There's not going to be chat interaction, but there is going to be Twitter interaction. Check out twitter.com/Razimus. Send me a message, send me a comment. All night I will be checking my Twitter and answering any questions, mentioning any comments and ghost stories. But first, I have to react to the latest episode of Ghost Adventures. I just watched it. It's a 2-hour special. Harrisville Farmhouse, The Curse, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They're very famous because of the the horror movies, I'm dressed. It's backwards. I'm dressed as Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray Stantz, in Ghostbusters because Dan Aykroyd, he experienced actual ghost activity. He recently went on a podcast. You probably heard him tell the stories, but he greatly downplayed the stories. Those stories, he did feel a ghost get in bed with him and kind of lay next to him, and he heard jewelry moving on the dressers. He heard doors opening and closing, but he doors open and closing, jewelry moving around on the dresser. Ghost got in bed with me. And some of the scenes in the movie Ghostbusters, the script which he co-wrote, were inspired by real ghost encounters he actually experienced. So that's why I kind of identify more with the he's definitely not Egon. Egon is, one of the major characters. Venkman, I don't have their names memorized. Winston, Venkman, Egon, and Ray. Is that all four of them? I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. I didn't look for that photograph, but when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster for Halloween. And my parents took me to the Halloween stores, the costume aisles, and it didn't exist. The Ghostbusters costume didn't exist yet. So all I wore was a Ghostbusters t-shirt for Halloween, and I was wearing this Ghostbusters t-shirt. The movie must have just came out. Anyway, huge fan. There's a picture of me somewhere wearing a Ghostbusters t-shirt, and that was it. I was the cool kid, as a little kid wearing just a t-shirt. So I'm a lifelong fan of Ghostbusters, and I see the Ghostbusters costumes year after year, but when I saw how elaborate they were this year, I had to check them out. This is clearly the Hollywood equivalent of, I would say like a Melmeter. And I could turn it on, but I don't like to do investigations in my house. I don't recommend anyone do ghost investigations in their house. I'm going to turn it on just to show you. Here we have a 0.5, 0.3, 0.2, 0.0. I'm not going to be doing a ghost investigation if there are any ghosts around here. I just want to show you, yikes. Or is that something around here? I can tell you this. My number one comment of the recent ghost investigation of the Ghost Adventures crew, the Harrisville Ranch or Farmhouse. One of the investigators on the crew was filming a tri-field meter with his phone. I don't have a tri-field meter with me. This episode just aired. You can probably catch it. You could probably catch the replay if you missed it. It's on the Travel Channel. I will be taking questions and comments. I just want to show an example of what a cell phone can do with an EMF meter. The Ghost Adventures crew used this device a lot. This is an EDI multi-purpose geophone / temperature / EMF. Now these two blue LEDs are the EMF sensors. They don't go off unless EMF enters the vicinity of this device. And they're holding one of the crew members. Is it Jay or is it Billy? Either Billy or Jay. I'm not sure who it was. Billy or Jay are holding the tri-field meter, trying to get a reading. And they do get a reading. They get a spike. And then the camera shows a wider shot, and you can see that he's filming the tri-field meter with his camera on his phone, specifically his camera phone. And I was like, whoa, wait a second here. Wait a second. These guys are supposedly professionals. They are professionals, all right? I'm not going to say they're not professionals. Wow, it's going off a little bit. Probably my computer. There's probably something definitely coming off my computer. You have to admit, a computer is going to be putting out all kinds of stuff, especially live streaming. But what I noticed with my very first corner of room experiment, which was in this very corner on, what was it, February 2018? What I noticed was when I turn on my camera phone and I switch it to video, and then I hold it up to a device which detects EMF. Look what happens. And maybe I have to hit the record. I'm going to actually record. Okay. Here we have, remember, these are blue LEDs on the bottom which detect EMF. I don't know if you saw that. It's kind of hard to get a good shot of it. But it makes the chirping sound. I'm going to try to do it where you can see it. I can see it. But phones definitely set off EMF, especially when they're recording video. Why? I don't know. Other than maybe some type of cloud saving process is taking effect. And when the cloud is saving this live video, it's sending and receiving EMF to the satellite towers, to the satellites in the sky, bouncing off the cell towers. Dang it. I did do it earlier, and I've done it many times. You could see on my first Mysterialis Corners of Room experiment, I held this very phone camera up to a different EMF device, and it spiked, and I thought it was a ghost. And I was like, hey, wait a second. There's a correlation here. The cell camera sets it off. And then I threw the camera to the other side of the room and debunked myself. So to the Ghost Adventures crew, don't bring cameras. It's kind of sporadic where the cell phone. Trust me, if you grab, usually it's the lower quality EMF detectors. Really spike with a cell phone camera. Okay, you see that? There it is. There it is. So Ghost Adventures crew, do you see that? You see the EMF being detected to an extreme degree between my cell phone and this EMF device that you guys use on a regular basis. Wow, this is perfect right here. It's not a spirit, it's not a ghost. It's this. Strong readings? No readings. Cell phone recording live video. So I know they did get other readings using other cameras. Just be sure to never bring your cell phone with you on an investigation. I was surprised the Ghost Adventures crew, they seemed to all have cell phones because they pulled them out, whipped them out. At one point, one of basically Siri was asking Zach in his pocket, no, I'm not dead, or I can't answer your I'm dead question. Or basically, this is what I personally noticed. One time I took my, obviously every time I take my cell phone to the movie theater, I turn it off. When it says turn it off, you turn it off. One time I must have watched a particularly very loud action movie, and my cell phone kept turning on by itself. And Zach Bagans is yelling, answer. And are you dead is what Siri said. It's just responding to Zach asking a question to the spirits around this haunted Harrisville farmhouse. And occasionally your phone will turn on when it hears loud noises. I personally think it's because it wants to eavesdrop on conversations. And it's just my theory. All I can say is when I was watching a particularly loud action movie, it turned on over and over and over, like 3 times, 4 times. I had to turn it off like 4 times. And I was like, wow, I wish I could pull the battery out. This is weird. My phone keeps turning on in my pocket. So that does happen when loud conversations are taking place, whether it's eavesdropping or just a glitch in the phone programming, whatever the case, I don't know. But it does happen. Okay, we have a lot of things to talk about. I will check real quick to see if we have any comments, questions. And I have plenty of stories to tell. But if you have any comments or questions, and here we have a question. Oh, wow. Says it's private. Let me see. Are we private? Is this video private? Can people... There are 4 people watching now, so it is not private, thank goodness. I understand 4 views is what it is. I don't do this for views. I went to a Halloween party dressed up as this last weekend, so I got my fill of Halloween last weekend. But I got to continue to react, but I will be answering questions. Someone asked, am I going to be streaming the entire episode of Ghost Adventures Halloween special, the 2-hour special where they get in the devil's rocking chair, where they investigate the conjuring house, the curse of the Harrisville Farmhouse? No. I'm not going to be streaming a show that I don't own and produce. Check out my channel. Check out my 400 plus videos. I, above and beyond, try my best to be as 100% my content as I can. And I don't stream other people's stuff. If you don't have the travel channel, I'm sure you can find various methods and means. But I do have a ghost story that was sent to me by Free Fortune Teller. On Twitter, they're known as @Fortune, the number 4 and free. And they did give me a reading once, and it was accurate. But they wanted to share their ghost stories, and they encouraged me to even live stream on Halloween. So you can thank Free Fortune Teller, Fortune for free at Twitter, for encouraging me to live stream on Halloween. There are going to be many amazing stories. I have a ghost investigation booklet I'm working on. Here was the prototype you've probably seen before, how to get spirits to reveal themselves for ghost hunting. A little bit too wordy. I have written a lot more since then. I wanted to publish it and have it ready to go for Halloween. Here is prototype number 2. Ghost Hunting Guide. How to See and Hear Invisible Entities, Ghosts, Spirits, by me. And the lettering wasn't perfect, so I'm going to black it out. And this is hand-painted. I hand-painted this whole thing. And I'm going to be making copies of it. And the inside's going to be just white papers. But I wanted the outside to be black with some cool design. This is a prototype of what my ghost hunting guide is going to look like, and I will have it out there ready to go. The winners of the 10,000 subscriber contest will get it. Now, Free Fortune Teller told some very interesting ghost stories. Let me read one of them. All right. My second ghost experience started as a lucid dream when I was 18. I was renting a basement apartment for a few weeks while I went to a vocational college for welding. The basement was set up like a barracks and was meant to house several people, but I was the only girl taking classes at the time, so I had this place to myself. I was standing in my bedroom. Everything was the same, except that the closet was filled with many different paintings of sunsets. I was looking through them when I felt a cold sensation, similar to the first story, and I will probably tell the first story as well. But this was emanating specifically from the hallway. I sensed that there was something or someone there standing just out of sight, and it was an extremely bad presence. I felt it was a devil or something that could kill me by showing itself to me. I shocked myself awake, but the feeling was still there. I started to look around in the dark, but I was pushed onto my back, and I was pushed into the bed as I felt a full-grown person crawling over me. Yikes, that's pretty scary. Whew. I felt the hands and the weight and a knee digging into my side. After that, the feeling slowly subsided, but I was too afraid to sleep for the rest of the night. I even imagine I saw a blue glowing figure in the bed next to me for about a minute, but I was afraid and perhaps I imagined this part. Wow, it's pretty scary. Sounds like you were attacked. The subsiding after the attack. You know, I can relate to that. I've been attacked a few times in bed, and it's usually in bed. And psychologists are going to say, it's in bed because you're in the REM state and you're having a dream. Or they're going to say, it's just sleep paralysis kicking in. And most definitely, you can't discount some of that. But when you're full-blown wide awake and you switch the switch off and you haven't even put your head on the pillow and something jumps on you, there's no chance for you to be in the REM state. And I've already told my jumped on top of me, unless I want to talk about that in the future, but probably around 2014 I was attacked, and maybe it was 2015 I was attacked again. Pretty close. It could have been 2016. I get attacked few and far between. It's not every day. It's not common. This story, pretty scary. I didn't experience anything as extremely physical as that. Spirits, when they jump on me, they usually feel like a cat. Like a cat just jumped on my chest. So you can imagine, you're trying to go to sleep and like a cat jumps on your chest. It's scary, but at the same time, it's like, what's that pressure? What's going on? Am I having a heart attack? And one time, that happened. And I did feel it jump off like a cat one time. But one time, it just subsided. It just kind of like went away. It's just kind of like went away. And I've never had the extreme physical, except for when I was grabbed on my throat. In 2011, I was grabbed on my throat. But Dan Aykroyd, he felt a ghost like nestled next to him, like spoon, like cuddle up next to him. And this is long before the Ghostbusters movies. It inspired those movies. But very interesting. Ghosts, spirits, they seem to want to hang around humans. They seem to want to do what humans do. And so the logical conclusion is they're the dead of humans. They just want to chill out on a bed. But I have some radical theories where I say they're just non-human spirits. And where do they come from? It just becomes a big philosophical debate, and I don't want to get into that. But I have many, many theories. I'm not going to put those theories in this booklet. I'm going to put in this booklet, strictly, bluntly, to the point, how to see and hear invisible spirits. Now, I'm using the word invisible. It kind of goes without saying, but it makes the title sound good. Spirits are invisible 99% of the time. 1% of the time, they're not invisible. And there are many, many theories why that is. Let me continue to react to the Ghost Adventures episode. They began going to the house that inspired the movie The Conjuring. And I did see the movie The Conjuring. Ed and Lorraine Warren, very famous ghost investigator, probably the most famous duo of ghost investigators. And they've both since passed to the other side. But they coined the phrase EVP, electronic voice phenomena. I heard them many times go on Art Bell. Now, maybe only 2 times I heard them live. Maybe 3. I actually listened to Art Bell live in the 90s, and mostly the late 90s. And I did hear Ed and Lorraine talk and play their EVPs live, and I listened to them, and I was freaked out. I didn't know if it was real or not. I was like, wow. You would hear the blood-curdling, sound like a dinosaur. And you're like, is that real? And it's real. It's a real phenomenon. They would go to graveyards and just record and talk to the air. And then they'd get home and listen. Or maybe they would do a live session like Zach Bagans likes to rewind and play it live, just to show the audience it's not rigged up and post-production created with special effects. Some devices capture ghost voices better than others. I've had pretty bad success, pretty low success. But with a couple Sony recorders and a couple lapel mics, if the wind blows just right, I can capture something. With my regular camera walking down the street, I did capture something. Okay, so they get to the farmhouse. It looks pretty scary. The current owners say they've seen a black mass or a black mist. Pretty scary, pretty freaky. I've never seen a black mist. I haven't seen everything. But I have seen poltergeist activity to an extreme degree in 2011. But black mist, I've heard about it many times. When you hear a story over and over and over again, I consider it good evidence that it's real, that it exists. Whether it's UFOs, flying saucers, black masses, black mist, I believe it's possible entities can appear as smoke and mist. So the boy specifically saw a black shadow, and it's interpreted by the parents as mist. But he said he was about to go to sleep. He looked up, and in the corner, it's always the corner. I have a theory, corners of rooms, where spirits enter in your room, preferring a corner, and almost a feng shui yin and yang thing. They prefer one corner to be their corner that they enter your room in. I firsthand witnessed this in 2011 over and over and over. I'm writing a book called Corners of Rooms. So when the boy said he saw the black shadow moving in the corner and that he looked at it and it didn't go away, it was still there. It was there. Like, you know how you blink and it disappears? It was still there. It didn't move. Or it moved, but it didn't dissipate. It was just there. And he was so scared he left the farmhouse for 2 weeks. And his parents live there, so he has to come back. But he's genuinely freaked out by the place. Now, Ed and Lorraine Warren had a famous seance and exorcism, I guess, at the location, where a really heavy wooden table rose up off the ground, where a really heavy wooden chair levitated a particular individual and flew the person in the chair to the other side of the room. It's too bad we don't have that footage, but people ended up moving out and selling the place and wanting nothing to do with it, and they did blame Ed and Lorraine Warren a bit for that. That backstory really helps build the hype, because I'm not too familiar with the story. I investigate spirits because it happened to me. I'm not the type of person that has read every ghost story, so I didn't hear that one. I didn't know about it. But listening live to Ed and Lorraine Warren on Art Bell, Ed Warren said, the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life This is Ed Warren, who recorded thousands of EVPs, investigated thousands of haunted locations, or at least hundreds. And he said he was in a house and by himself, or maybe his wife was not too far, and just getting AVPs, just recording, talking, hey, are you there? Can you respond? And he said he heard a disembodied voice not too far from him, really close to him, a disembodied voice that yelled at him. Ah! And it wasn't only on the recorder. He could hear it with his regular ears. Disembodied, nothing there, something yelling in close proximity to him. He said that freaked him out. Not in using those exact words, but he said that was the scariest thing he'd ever experienced. And he said he did experience disembodied voices before, but that was the worst. He said it sounded like an insane witch yelling at him. And he said those are the rarest. Disembodied voices, hearing with your own ears, are the rarest. Usually it's on a recording and you didn't hear it at the time. Disembodied voices, very scary thing. I may or may not have heard a disembodied voice, and the reason I don't talk about it is because there's always going to be a psychologist that says, oh, you're schizophrenic, you hear voices. And in no way, shape, or form, I don't hear voices. Most of what I saw was my eyeballs seeing something. And I'm sure there's going to be a psychologist saying, there's an explanation for seeing things. It's called a delusion. I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. And I filmed it. It's the reason why I go out with devices like this and film evidence. But back to the Harrisville Farmhouse reaction. It was an interesting episode. To me, evidence-wise, despite the fact that I debunked some evidence of them getting the tri-field meter going off with a cell phone camera. Never bring cell phones on an investigation. Never put them near EMF devices. They're going to give you false readings. But the best evidence I heard was they turned on a device which is basically like a spirit box, but it's more like, I guess, a spirit portal is what they call them, I believe. And Zach's holding it near what looks like a closet, and a man's voice comes through that says something to the effect of forgive me, or something about forgive and then me. And then they interpret he says later leave, but to me it sounds like he says me again. And that's an authentic, it sounded authentic, it sounded real, it sounded authentic. But I have to admit, this particular episode, the entire Ghost Investigation crew of the Ghost Adventure guys were overreacting the whole time. They were like, and it doesn't lead to too much credibility when you're hyperventilating from walking into a room. Now, I understand it can be scary, and I understand if they don't get any super good evidence, at least they can show what their faces looked like in a scary place. So I understand why they do it. But if I walked in that place, I'd be like this the whole time. I wouldn't have, I don't know. Maybe I'd be a little bit scared, but I wouldn't overreact the way they do. They act like, sometimes they act like they're possessed, but they want you to think they might be possessed. Makes the show more interesting. One of the guys definitely acted something. He acted like he was a medium going into a trance and trying to summon the spirit through his body. Was that real? Was that not real? I don't know. We've only seen that guy on the show once, but he was there during the Ed and Lorraine Warren investigations, and even prior. Him and his brother investigated the location before the Warrens got there. So that was interesting. He said, hey, spirits, do you remember me? And that is something that goes through the mind of an investigator when they go back to a haunted location. Do the spirits remember you? I personally think the spirits do remember you. I've gone to the grist mill ghost 5 times at night to investigate exclusively, and 1 time in the day to investigate and get some day shots. And I do believe spirits do remember and recognize who's there. Okay, let's check out Twitter. Happy Halloween, John. Best wishes all the way from the UK. Is a message from Lee Westlake. Thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So if anyone has any comments, questions, I have tons of stuff to talk about. Don't worry if you don't have a comment or a question. But here's the details if you want to send me a message, and I'll talk about it live on the air. I recently picked up a bunch of ghost books. Here's one. Haunted Houses and Wandering Ghosts of California. I was specifically looking for California ghosts, and this book's kind of falling apart. I wanted an older edition of this book. Here's a supposedly haunted location. I wanted to go to some of these. I don't assume it's haunted just because there's a story. But, you know, I definitely go with an open mind. If there's a story, if there's, you know, smoke, there's fire, or the other way around, whatever the case. Winchester Mystery House. I went there in San Jose, I believe. And I did experience a spirit standing in the lobby of the place. Now, it wasn't the lobby of the front door. It was the lobby of the barn entrance. All the service people would have entered in the barn entrance. And rarely did Mrs. Winchester allow people to enter the front entrance. Like if it was the President of the United States, some hugely famous politician or movie star, perhaps Houdini, famous escapist, magician, illusionist, who did have a seance in one of the witch cap little minarets, whatever you want to call them, the top tiny round rooms, which I did go on a tour, and you can hear the echo. And Houdini did do a seance there to kind of prove seances are fake. So I don't know what happened during that particular seance, but Houdini probably would have went through the front door. But when you start the regular tour, you go through the barn door. They have a more expensive tour where you do go through the front door, which I did go on that. I wanted the bonus. You can go through the basement, and all the ghost stories are related to the basement, or most of them. And I didn't sense or hear or feel anything in the basement. What I sensed was I walked through the entryway of the barn entrance, and there's a really narrow doorway with huge dressers to the left, and it's the barn entrance. These dressers are so huge, and they're built into the house. They look like horse saddles would go inside of them. Gigantic drawers. And that is the room with the gigantic drawers to the left that I sensed a spirit just standing there, almost standing there, and everyone had to walk through the ghost. Very creepy, because I walked through this thing, and I was the only one on the tour that knew it was even there. I didn't mention anything because I knew no one would believe me, and I didn't want the place to think I was the center of attention. We were all paying attention to the tour guide and listening to everything they said. But, yeah, it was interesting. I think the ghost that haunts the Winchester Mystery House literally takes some type of tally, takes some type of... it forces people to walk through it, and it can gain information about every visitor. It's very interesting. But I just wanted to show some of the books I haven't shown yet. Well, they're around here somewhere. But here's a book called The Poltergeist Experience by D. Scott Rogo. And D. Scott Rogo, I read this book immediately after reading this book, The Enigma of the Poltergeist. And this guy, D. Scott Rogo, I believe, is the investigator that took the mantle and took up the investigation of poltergeists right after this guy, Raymond Bayless. And so it's like a continuation. It's very interesting that I just picked up two random poltergeist books, and this guy talks about the last guy. And he says, you know, he got all of his notes. And he passed away, and he got all of his poltergeist notes, and they were friends. And I have to say, these two guys, I believe they both passed away at this point. They investigated poltergeists to an extreme extent, but they were never a poltergeist host. They were never harassed and the target of a poltergeist. They were both independent investigators that went out of their way to find evidence. And they did find evidence to the point where they believed and they knew it was real. But they were never the target. They were never the, I say, host. When you're the target and the host of a poltergeist, which I was in the year 2011, it's a different world. It's a different story. In front of my eyeballs, I saw objects move, and like Dan Aykroyd, I'm writing about it, but I was hesitant, and I'm still hesitant to this day, because it's not my goal, life's goal, to write and talk about poltergeists. Dan Aykroyd's response was to write a comedy, and he got together with his comedy buds, like Bill Murray, and they made a comedy. That's his reaction to a scary situation. My reaction is to write an intelligent, this is what happened, here's my theory on what this phenomena is, which is real. I'll turn these on briefly. These are static meters, and they're not pre-programmed, they're not rigged, they're created using basic technology. You see the green one going off right here, probably because there's some static buildup near the microphone. That would be my guess. Okay, you've seen the red go off too. Just static buildup near the microphone. No big deal. Let's switch them. Yep, it's not the device. It's just static buildup around the microphone. Well, when you take these to a potentially haunted location and you just sit it there and you turn them on and you ask questions, you can get intelligent responses. It's pretty scary, it's pretty freaky, and people might wonder why I don't ghost investigate every night, every day. Because, I was inspired to get evidence to prove what I experience is real. And once you have that and you show it and people say, that's fake, that looks so fake, it's probably pre-programmed, you probably have some device setting off the device, and there's going to be skeptics upon skeptics, disbelievers upon disbelievers, haters, just people saying fake, and it discourages me, but I'm not going to stop, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to continue to investigate. I have a new poltergeist book, I'm looking for it. I know it's around here somewhere. I know it's around here somewhere. Should have been a little bit more organized. I know it is around here somewhere. Oh well, it's not that big a deal. But what I was about to say about these two guys is both of them believe that poltergeists were of the mind, that poltergeists had something to do with a reaction called psychokinesis, moving things with your mind and you don't know you're the one moving them. Or maybe you do. I see that as science fiction. I see that as Doctor Strange, Firestarter. I see that as Hollywood make-believe. I see that as Disney's Fantasia, where Mickey the wizard can just tell the mop to mop up and the broom to sweep up and the dishes to clean themselves. While it's hilarious to see, these things clean up after themselves, what I experienced was objects moving and intelligent, independent, sentient, invisible beings were the ones moving it. It wasn't me, it wasn't psychokinesis, it wasn't something of the mind. I wasn't going through any traumatic events at the time. I got a raise at my job. I moved into this place, and 2 weeks in, it was haunted with extreme poltergeist. I believe I call them imp-like poltergeist. I've already talked about that at great length. But when it choked me, I didn't choke myself. You can't think, choke myself. Or you can't not think and just sit back and play in a video game and get choked. You can't watch a movie and get choked by an invisible entity and it be your psyche. It doesn't work that way. I paid attention to what they did. They entered the corner of the room every single night. And I believe they left in the corner of the room. But I do believe they probably left in the corner of the room in my closet maybe a couple times. But it was 99% of the time the corner to the right of my bed. And that's a repeating pattern of intelligence. After listening to hundreds of ghost stories and people tweeting me, emailing me, saying, hey, that Corners of Rooms thing. Here's a story, Corners of Rooms. Here's a story, Corners of Rooms. I watched every single Ghost Adventures episode, and I made a note every time they mentioned corner of the room and a spirit and something in the corner. It's a lot. It's way more than I would have expected. I can't remember the number, but we're talking 20, 30, 40 times the Ghost Adventures crew. And this is when I didn't watch the show. We're talking season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They mentioned a spirit in the corner of the room like 40 times. And I can make a compilation of that. And I didn't watch the show back during those seasons. I started watching Ghost Adventures probably 2018. Probably a year and a half ago. To be honest. So I had to go back and binge watch all of the older season episodes. I had to see Nick, who's no longer a crew member, give his take. And Nick was very blunt. He's very like, hey, you here? No? All right. He's kind of very East Coast attitude toward the spirits. And now he has his own ghost hunting show. But what else happened during the Ghost Adventures episode, Halloween special? Well, they did get the voice. It said, save me or something. Or it said something, and it sounded like a legitimate voice. That's the best evidence they got. Or maybe it said, forgive me. Forgive for me. Something like that. Pretty good evidence. And then, some guy acted like he was possessed. They feel a cold area. Oh, do you feel that cold area? Yeah. You got a device which detects the cold. There are devices which specifically, Gary Galka has a really cool cold spot detector I would get if I could afford it. But, it's 74.6 degrees, 74.7. And, show the cold spot. Show the evidence of the cold spot. Just showing your hands. Oh, you feel the cold spot? It does. I focus on evidence, and I know those guys focus on evidence the best they can. they do a good job. They've captured way more evidence than I did, that I've ever have. They've been doing it longer than I have, but they didn't know that cell phone cameras set off EMF devices. So I guess everyone can be open to learning. I have some, let's see. I have some notes. All right. Let's check out my notes. So does anyone have any questions? All right, let's see. Three ways you can hear and see ghosts. You know, I'm writing this book, and this is a booklet. It's more of a booklet. Those winners of the 10,000 subscriber contest will get a copy of this. It's not done. This is the cover. The inside is mostly done. Trust me. I wanted the cover to be really detailed. Ghost Hunting Guide, how to see and hear invisible spirits, entities, ghosts, whatnot. I'll give you 3 ways how I know, how I've experienced firsthand, and this isn't in the book. I'll just off the top of my head. 3 examples of how you can see and hear ghosts. Yeah, first you got to be brave. You have to have some guts. You have to have a location in mind. Don't go to a location by yourself like I do. Get a friend and make sure you're there just in case it's a location where the less advantaged individuals have to sleep. You know, a lot of these places are abandoned locations, are where homeless people are forced to get under a roof for the night. And if it's raining, I don't blame them. So, abandoned locations. Go with a friend. Be safe. Go to an abandoned location with a friend. Be safe. Stake it out before you get there. Stake it out in the daytime. Don't just decide, oh, it's 2 a.m. Let's check out that abandoned, creepy place 2 miles down the road. Stake it out when it's full broad daylight. Make sure you're not going over any trespassing signs or fences or anything like that. Try your best to get some night vision equipment, a basic camera. I have a Sony 4K camera which has a really cool night vision feature, and I have a lot of infrared flashlights that are very cheap. You got to be brave. You got to go to one of these locations. You got to look in pitch blackness. And you have to, believe it or not, you have to believe. You have to believe in spirits. You have to have faith. So I'd say number 1 is believe and have faith that spirits even exist. If you don't believe and if you don't have faith spirits exist, your results are going to be a lot less. I went to what I call the pirate house 5 times at night. Every single 5 times, all 5 times, the spirit did something to show me it was there. So I heard it with my ears. But that location's actually somewhat fairly semi-popular among kids that just want to, check it out. The pirate house, ooh, cool. And they'll drink probably there, and they'll hang out there, probably smoke there and whatever. And they don't experience ghosts. It's not a famously haunted location. But I know someone that's been there many times. They've never experienced ghosts there ever. Have they ever been there at night, though? Maybe at dusk. But I can't imagine they've been there in the pitch black darkness of night. So, number 1, believe and have faith. Number 2, go in the pitch black darkness of night, but go with a friend and be safe. have the proper equipment. Infrared works better than regular flashlights. Regular flashlights are going to scare nocturnal animals away from you. You're going to alert the owls, raccoons, opossums, whatever the case is creeping and crawling and is generally a nocturnal animal. You're going to scare them away when you're blasting a flashlight all over the place. And you're going to alert locals. Hey, what are people doing down there? I did use... It was... it was this device right here. I used the laser feature. I'll show you what the laser feature looks like. I don't use it too often. I used it during one ghost investigation, and let me turn off the light. That's too bright, isn't it? It's too bright. Just temporarily. Temporarily. Ooh, wow, we got a 3.4. But I don't know what that 3.4 was. I was moving around, turning lights on and off. But I'm going to turn on the laser feature real quick. Here it is. Now you can see the lasers against the wall. And you can see the lasers reflecting off the camera. But I had these lasers in the window of the pirate house, and they were bouncing off like an archway in the window so brightly that the entire window was like neon red. And a local farmer or resident from a mile down the road saw it. And they started coming my direction to see what was going on. So you don't want anything visible that a human can see. It will affect the investigation. You want to be pitch black stealth mode. You want to be special ops. You want to go in, no one see you there, and then you leave like a ninja, like SEAL team or something. And spirits will pay attention to you. You're not going to have distractions. Even nocturnal animals. You're going to get owls go, hoo hoo. But generally speaking, the nocturnal animals will see that you too are nocturnal. And I don't know if they'll assume you can see them or not, but spirits, I say generally speaking, for the most part, the active spirits where you're going to get evidence, they are nocturnal. So number one, to see and hear ghosts, you have to believe they exist. You have to go to a location that's abandoned safely. You have to scout it out in the daytime. Get there in the middle of the night. Preferably use infrared cameras. Believe they're there. And then talk to the air. Don't yell or shout. But just say, hey, are there any spirits here? I'm here to get evidence that spirits exist. I'm here to get evidence whether there's a spirit here or not. Can you make your presence known? And saying, can you make your presence known? A rock was thrown against the house, and a mist can be seen in the video. People say, it's just fog rolling in. There was no fog rolling in from anywhere. And with my eyeballs, I didn't see that mist. I didn't see it. The reason I didn't see the mist is because it was pitch black. And naturally, you're going to look around with your eyes. and only occasionally are you going to be looking at this tiny screen that's green and black and you can see what's going on. But at the time that the mist went by, I was looking around with my eyes because I heard a rock sounding object fall or be thrown by the spirit, clearly reacted to, can you make your presence known? So I'm sure that's 2 steps. Let's think of a 3rd step of how you can see and hear invisible entities. A 3rd step. Okay, let me think of a 3rd step. You almost have to relate to them, and they have to relate back to you. If they see you as a tourist, they'll probably treat you like a tourist and just ignore you. I know that the pirate house, the grist mill, that I told the spirit, I grew up here. I'm a local. I went to the local high school, home of the pirates. This house was built by a former pirate. I don't know if you are associated with that in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just here, and I come in peace. So what I've noticed is, if you come in peace and you're peaceful and you try your best to make a connection with the spirit in any way, then it sometimes will be more open to revealing itself in many different ways. Seeing and hearing. I will finish this booklet before the end of the year. I'm going to try to finish it next month, have it ready to go, ship it out. I'm probably going to make 100 of them. 100. So if you want a copy, check out my Twitter. I'll definitely announce it. I'll make a video announcing it. This video, I had a lot of things planned and setting up everything, and at the last second I had to use OBS Studio to live stream, which I've never used before. And I watched a tutorial on how to do it in 15 minutes. I figured it out. But I think I also figured out how to stream with multiple. So I'm going to have guests on, and this OBS Studio is not that complicated. I think I can figure it out to have 4 guests on. We will see what happens. In the future, stay tuned. Let's see. It is 11:02 my time. We have to see if there's any other stories. I know there's a story. I'll read a story. Any comments on Twitter? Here's a question from Lee Westlake. And I do have another question. Before we get to Lee's question, let's get to that previous question from a previous poster on Twitter. If you want to tweet me, my Twitter is @Razimus on Twitter. But I had a question, and I'm going to be scrolling to the exact question because I want to mention the name. The question was about cameras, infrared cameras. All right, here it is. The question is by ESMouse06. And on Twitter, he is ESMOUSE, the number 0, the number 6. ESMouse06. His question is, curious to hear your thoughts on the difference between entities that can be detected with infrared versus full spectrum. Seems like ghost hunters prefer infrared, but occasionally entities can be seen in one and not the other. It's a very good question. Very good question. I have both an infrared and a full spectrum camera. I just recently saw my full spectrum. Alright. Here's my full spectrum camera. It's a GoPro knockoff, and I don't know if it was altered to be full spectrum or if it was built to be full spectrum, but it works. And full spectrum looks like pink skies, purple trees, and some look better than others. Some work better than others. Usually it's a modified camera / a broken camera. I could tell you this. I owned a little digital camera, and I loaned it to someone. I know this is kind of bright, but it's the best we got. I loaned this camera to a friend. This little digital camera, not a big deal. It cost $100, and they said, "Oh, okay, here you go. Thanks for letting me use it." And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." And I look at it, and it was broken. They must have dropped it from like 20 feet. They must have dropped it like 20 feet into some boulders because it was shattered and broken, destroyed internally. And I was like, "Hey, it's broken. What's up with that?" And the typical response with a friend that borrows a camera and breaks the crud out of it is, "Oh, it was like that when I got it." Yeah, it was like, okay, whatever. Same story with my Game Boy. When I was a kid, no big deal. I let someone borrow my Game Boy, and I get it back, and it's scratched. The screen's all scratched, and it's like broken. And it was like that when I got it. Anyway, what my friend accidentally did was they broke the internal lens, and they turned my camera into a full spectrum camera. So it is possible to break on accident. I wouldn't recommend trying this with an expensive camera. You can try it with a really cheap camera, and really there are tutorials on how to open it up. And I've looked at them, and I can't follow that, but I can follow dropping it from a distance and seeing what happens. I don't recommend it, but it worked to the extent of the skies were purple, trees were violet, and it was full spectrum. So, can spirits appear on full spectrum? I've tested this out a number of times, and I've received. And note, this is a GoPro knockoff. It has like a fisheye lens, and it films video. And most ghost investigators prefer full spectrum still photos. And I never understood why they prefer still photos. Perhaps still photos gives you better evidence, because I've captured exactly 0 ghosts with this. 0. But just because I captured 0 ghosts with it, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. You have to be at the right place at the right time. It's all about luck. Hunting for spirits and ghosts with evidence on cameras is kind of like mining for gold. Right place at the right time, and you have to get lucky sometimes. But as I am writing, it's more than just right place at the right time and getting lucky. There are actual strategies you can use increasing your odds. So it isn't like Vegas. It isn't like gold mining. Those are kind of rough analogies. But why do spirits appear on full spectrum as opposed to infrared? Infrared, I captured a mist. And I've captured nothing with this. I don't think I've used this with enough hours to know if it works. But the Ghost Adventures crew have photographed a number of very interesting full spectrum photographs with manifestations of feet, of torsos with heads, and like dark figures, just generic dark figures. So I think with full spectrum, it's hit and miss. I think full spectrum might be as good as a Polaroid camera, where you just snap 1,000 Polaroid cameras and you get lucky and you have one with something paranormal on it. All I can say is I prefer infrared because it's pitch black to the human eye, and you can see things. I've captured evidence with infrared. So when something works, you go with it. But if I could afford it, I would actually try thermal. I would try a thermal camera. Those thermal cameras would show heat and cold. That would be way better than a full spectrum. Seeing a heat and cold, people talk about cold spots constantly. If you could film that cold spot moving, that would be interesting. If that cold spot is in the shape of a humanoid with arms and legs, that would be more interesting to me. Even some of the full spectrum photographs I've seen were very blurry and it's hard to see what's going on. But thermal would be my next thing I'm going to try for. I'm going to try to get some really cheap knockoff brand thermal cameras. I've seen some as low as $250. How good are they? How small is the screen? Do I have to film the screen with, which I'm willing to do. I'm willing to hook up a GoPro and film the tiny screen. Is that the only way you can get the data, or can you film it internally? I've never owned a thermal camera, and that's something I want to try for. But we have another question by Lee Westlake. Being the primary impetus behind 99% of all ghost investigations, has your experience made you more or less comfortable with the concept of corporeal death? More or less comfortable. Well, I would have to say, and this is a bit of a, this is a really good question. Am I more comfortable with death, with life after death, because I've seen evidence on camera that I filmed myself, because I've seen evidence on an EMF device? I'm going to use this more in the future. As long as cell phones aren't in the radius, it can get some accurate readings. The answer might surprise you. Has capturing evidence changed my mind in any way, shape, or form about life after death? And the answer would be no. My mind about life after death has changed 0% after ghost investigating. Let's turn the regular lights back on. This is just extremely bright. All right. My thoughts on life after death have changed 0%, and I'll tell you why. Because before I investigated for the very first time, which wasn't that long ago, I already knew spirits were real. I knew spirits existed. I had a faith and a belief that spirits existed, and therefore I already had a faith and belief that there's life after death. And so capturing evidence is more for someone else, although it is for me as well. But I've shown it even to relatives, and the relatives were like, that's interesting, that's interesting. Even the relatives saw it as and whatever mind they have on life after death wasn't changed by my videos. But hopefully maybe someone's life or death belief or mind concerning just open-mindedness. Hopefully someone sees what I have done, which isn't that much. I've done a smidge, I've done a tiny bit of nothing. But whatever I've done, I can tell you this is Ghost Adventures crew. Even though they're very animated, I've used the exact same devices they've used, and I've gotten the exact same results at haunted locations. And I think they're obviously exposing millions and millions. Some lady on the most recent episode said, she's honored to give them a tour of the Harrisville Farmhouse, and that she said it's really important work that Zach and his crew are doing, because there are a lot of disbelievers, a lot of skeptics. And just because someone classifies themselves as this, or this, it doesn't mean they don't have a belief in spirit entities. So I've made that assumption myself. But the reason it hasn't changed me, is what I believe the reason why I've had success to an extent. Because I already believed. Step one, have belief and faith spirits even exist. So I genuinely do have that faith and belief. And when you have that faith and belief, spirits will recognize that faith and belief. These beings tend to see the human deeper than skin deep. They will see right through you. I've said this in previous videos. I believe spirits have X-ray vision, where they can physically see your organs and see right through your body, because they're slightly in a higher dimension. So they see us through our bodies. They, which brings to mind some of the bogus faith healers. Oh, you got cancer of the liver. I can see it with my wizard eyes. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form condoning faith healers that claim to see your cancer of the pancreas or whatever the case may be with their wizard eyes. But I'm just saying, I think entities of a higher dimension looking down see this entire dimension differently, so radically differently that we are the ghosts to them. We are translucent. They can see right through us. And I think it's one of the reasons why they can see in the pitch black of darkness. Why do they come out at night, preferably than the day? I don't know, but perhaps because it's quiet. It's nice and quiet, a lot of solitude, and you can notice them easier. In the daytime, everything's so loud and hustling and bustling that I think they are out in the daytime, and we just can't see or notice them. But if I didn't have a faith and belief in spirits existing, I don't think they would have revealed themselves as much as they have. So that's my answer to that question. If anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Razimus at Twitter. So let's read ghost story number 1 from Free Fortune Teller. My first ghost experience was at age 7 or 8. My grandfather had passed away, and it was the night of his wake. It would be an open casket wake. My dad thought that would be too unpleasant for me, so I was left at my grandparents' home by myself. I was sitting in an armchair in the living room when a cold electric feeling started filling the room, rising from the floor, as if it were filling with water. It was alarming enough to me that I climbed onto the back of the chair to escape it, but it kept rising until it was all over my head. At that moment, I heard a thump on the ceiling, directly above me, and then things started to calm down. When I felt safe leaving the chair, I went upstairs to see what the thump could have been. In the very middle of the hallway, there was a small box covered in red fabric. A pair of bedding balls, meditation balls. Okay. I really wanted to take them. I felt I absolutely had to take them. But I decided to put them on a dresser just inside the master bedroom door. My grandfather was kind of a mean person who liked to play practical jokes. I was always afraid of my grandfather, and I didn't want anything that belonged to him. Okay, wow, that's an interesting story. Like the room filling with electricity, an electric feeling. That is interesting. Yeah. The Ghost Adventures guys and many other paranormal investigators, you look for that electric feeling. I think you can capture it with static electricity devices such as this one. I'll turn it on briefly. You can see it's on. This captures static electricity. This is the device I prefer to use with the Gristmill Ghost, or at least this is the favorite device of the Gristmill Spirit. It prefers this device not because this device happens to have anything special about it other than it detects static electricity. The spirit prefers to. It's also used all of my other static devices, at least this one and the other one as well. Here's the other one. So it has gone off systematically in a row from device to device. And I'm standing 10, 15 feet back, and this is next to an adobe brick wall with some wooden bars on a window. Zero power at this 1830s house. But it's the reason I prefer static electricity devices. I literally have to build up an static charge. Okay, you can see how it works. This is simply static electricity on my hand. Everyone's hand has static electricity. And here's a feature I've never used on purpose. You can see even touching this close, it's going off. Now the Spirit sets this thing off systematically at the grist mill. And here is, it basically records what it hears, then it repeats it. And it's kind of, I wouldn't, it could be creepy, but at the same time, it's almost harmful to the investigation. I set it up and I'll say something and it'll repeat my voice. And testing, I don't know how this even works. All I can say is I've never used the sound feature ever, because there's a couple different modes. I don't know how they work, but it has nothing to do with programming. It has everything to do with just making a sound effect. I think it makes a sound when it goes, but I've never gotten it to work because it's one button. But there's a feature that repeats your voice, and I very much don't like it. But the rest of it I do like. So I just ignore. I paid extra for the sound feature. I prefer it with no sound. So if you're going to get one of these, don't get the sound. If let's say a spirit makes a noise, ooh, this might ruin that. And I've noticed the Ghost Adventures crew guys, the Ghost Adventure crew guys picked these up with sound. They must have clicked sound. And every time there was literally like a growl, like a demon was like, "Rrr." And then this was going off with like a corny sound effect. It was going, and then the demon's like, "Hey, you can't hear me. This thing's making too much noise." And the audio didn't pick it up. Audio was focusing on this corny cartoon effect. So I prefer, if you're going to get a device like this, make sure there's no sound. But, okay. You know what? I was going to tell a story. My recent dream. I had a freaky dream on, it was last weekend. Let me get the exact day. I'm big into exact dates. Okay, so Saturday night on the 26th of October, I went to bed after a Halloween party. And I had definitely a freaky dream. Definitely a scary dream. I don't remember 99% of it. I don't remember 99% of the dream. I just felt a cold breeze, and I wanted to document if it's the fan turning on. Okay, it's probably the fan. All right, not a big deal. It's probably the fan. Anyway, I guess I'll keep that over there. I don't know if you can see that. So I'll leave one device on for the temperature alone. 75.3 degrees. I went to bed on the 26th of October. Had a freaky dream. The dream went on and on. I was in the dream, obviously. And, I don't know, some type of game. It's like a rich person's game. I can't remember much of the aspect. Maybe there was a party. Maybe there's a rich person's party. But the part that I actually lucidly remember was I was inside of an old house. I wonder if this house exists, because I got a pretty good look of the house. Matter of fact, let me draw what the house looked like so you can see in my dream. The house. Gonna have to erase this. I had a pretty creepy dream, the 26th of October. I was in a house. And the house looked like a castle. The house looked like this. This is the house from my dream. So, these, I believe, had shingles. I believe there were shingles on here. And it was definitely a castle-looking house. But it was a house. Or maybe it was a castle, but... in the dream, I was definitely down here on the bottom. Or maybe I was down here. All I can say is I was in one of these lower levels in one of the turrets. And this is a dream, okay? This is me in a dream. And I was talking to some guys. And it was they were kind of like frat guys. They're kind of like random frat guys who I didn't know. But in the dream, they were my friends. It seemed normal at the time, but seeing them, I don't know who they were. So some random frat guys. They kind of looked like rich frat guys. And this was some type of mansion. And they were talking about magic. They were talking about rituals. And they asked me if I ever did any magic or rituals. And I said in the dream, this is not real, it didn't happen in real life. This is exclusively in some nightmare I had on the 26th of this month. I said, oh, well, if you keep it between you and me, I'll tell you the one. And this is not real, this is inside of a dream. I said that I killed a chicken in a ritual, which I've never done. There is a chicken killing ritual in real life. I think it's called Puelo Muembe or something. I can't pronounce it. Azalea Banks, I believe, had a video where she talked about that, and it was pretty freaky. This dream didn't resemble that in any way, shape, or form. It was just me at a really rich, fancy mansion. Everyone's talking about magic rituals. They asked me if I did one. I said, I killed a chicken. And right after I killed the chicken, and this is in a dream, it's not real. Yikes. The EMF is going off. Hey. My EMF is chirping while I'm telling this creepy ghost story of... It's not a ghost story. This is strictly a dream. I considered it a scary dream. We're talking nightmare. I don't like doing investigations in my house. I don't prefer it. I don't recommend it. Why? Because I got to sleep in that bed over there tonight. And I'm going to remember, hey, there's a freaking thing going off in my corner of my room. I don't like that. It's not cool. It's chirping. Chirping means the EMF is an entity is skirting around it. Okay, well, I turned on the static meter. And anything you see is probably from my hand. I just want to make sure the background is black so the camera can see if anything happens. Alright, let me continue with my freaky story. That thing's chirping. I don't prefer that. So this is the story. I tell and I brag and I boast, I killed a chicken once and during a ritual, which is just a dream. I've never done that. I would never do that. I love animals in real life. I would never kill an animal for a ritual personally. That's my personal take. I prefer to love animals and be nice to them. And I said in the dream that immediately after killing the chicken, and I think I saw it was in the middle of a pentagram, something to that effect, which I would never do. Freaky, creepy. This is like a nightmare type of a dream. The ritual, I guess, took place either in this one or this one or this one. All I can say is immediately after, I'm not trying to block that, but it seems to have stopped. Immediately after, in the dream, I heard footsteps. Just footsteps, footsteps, footsteps. An entity walking upstairs above me. So I'm down here, and I just hear footsteps, footsteps, footsteps. And it was super creepy in the dream. That immediately after ritual, footsteps above me. And the floorboards above. Very distinct, very loud, very obvious. And it freaked me out and it scared me a little bit. I mean, I woke up and I knew it was just a dream. But I was like, wow, that's a weird dream. It's a creepy dream. The dream continued with some type of fancy party. We're talking a party that involved cars, equipment. I can't remember. The dream kind of dissolved into boringness. But the height and the pinnacle part of the dream was that, when I was talking to these guys. And looking back, the guys were probably demons. Probably weren't even real. It's probably dreams, probably fake. But it reminded me of a demon dream. Okay, demon dream is basically a nightmare. Okay, and I don't have nightmares very often, very rarely. So that's why it stuck out. But in the Ghost Adventures episode tonight, I saw like, wow, this is kind of deja vu a little bit. Because I saw, I think it was Jay, maybe it was Billy, no, I think it was Jay. Jay does this ritual with a circle in the basement of the Harrisville Farmhouse. And Zach asks permission before they do it. Is it okay if we do this? We know you live here. He's going to close it up right afterwards. And he's like, yeah, go for it. So they get permission to do this ritual, which is kind of odd that they do rituals. I don't know what this ritual's from, but I caught one word and it sounded something like from the Necronomicon. The Simon Necronomicon, published in the late 70s. The Simon Necronomicon, I have a copy. I have a copy around here somewhere. But here's a book which is a kind of a companion of the Simon Necronomicon. I've never read this. It's called The Gates of the Necronomicon. And specifically talks about the gates. You draw, then you do some ritual. I've never done this stuff, but at the same time, this book is totally debunked as a hoax. I can tell you from an artistic perspective that this drawing is not ancient. Supposedly these drawings are exactly etched to copy some ancient drawings. But as an artist who draws t-shirts, draws designs, I've been in many art classes. This was modernly drawn by the same guy that did the graphics for the cover of the book. And even the artist would admit that if he had a chance. But the whole point was to be as anonymous as possible. But I think it's odd that the Ghost Adventures crew kind of obsessively use Necronomicon rituals above any other. Kind of bizarre to me, kind of interesting. I don't know. They've noticed they work in the Ghost Adventures episode, the very last one. They don't kill a chicken, thank goodness. No chicken killing takes place like my dream. But they're in a circle in the basement. The circle looks like it was drawn with cornmeal or salt or something. Something similar to Haitian voodoo, Vodun. Kind of interesting. And we have them in the circle. And when they're in the circle, they hear footsteps upstairs, immediately above the circle. And that gave me a flashback of my dream. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. In a circle with a ritual, and footsteps are upstairs. Very freaky, very creepy. I don't like doing investigations in my room. I just wanted that for temperature reasons. I didn't know it was going to go off on the EMF. It chirped. It chirped. I think that was authentic, but it was very weak. I guess a better device to detect would not be a Ghostbusters.
He slimed me.
Let's hope that doesn't strike. But he slimed me. You know, I got this for the costume. Looking for my EMF meter. Not this thing, but the actual thing. I'm not looking for this one. I'm looking for the better one. Got so many devices around here. Lost track of where it is. Where is it? Where's my millimeter? Okay. So I remember this one's low on battery. So I'm going to turn this millimeter on. Because if there's something over there, 77.7 degrees. Maybe this will be set off. Maybe we'll get something other than a 0.0. That is so bright. Oh my gosh. That is too bright. It's too bright. My goodness. I recently had this fixed, new antenna installed on it. Even though this battery is low, let's use that one. Okay, another ghost story. Any questions, feel free to send them to Razimus at Twitter. Razimus at Twitter. We only have 22 minutes. I wanted to do something special for Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody. Hope everyone's having a great Halloween. I wanted to get the patches. Here, this comes with a screen printed, but I wanted one with the real patches. Like you can put the different names on here. And they apparently used flight suits, actual flight suits. And I've seen flight suits at thrift stores. I'm like, I could have got that and then put patches on it, and it would have been more authentic to the movie. So I'm going to try to look for that in the future. But any ghost stories, send them on over. Because I haven't checked my email yet. Let's check my email. And this is the first live stream I've done in a long time. Yes, okay. So Lee Westlake sent me the same question on email. So thank you for using my email, razimus@gmail.com. So we have a third ghost story. Thanks for Free Fortune Teller for sending me 3 ghost stories. That was really nice. The third and final ghost story from Free Fortune Teller at Fortune, the number 4 free on Twitter, is: the last was a sleepover. It was an old house converted into apartments. This friend had a bachelor apartment in the attic. I noticed a book by the bed that said ghosts, and the spine of this book was about 6 inches across, a very big book. I wanted to take a look, but the friends stopped me, then told me that it was actually just a coffee table book, that he had never seen, that he had never even read it. Even so, he didn't want me to touch this book. I wanted to tell him a couple of my ghost stories, but he wanted to change the subject. Very common, happens to me all the time. He was very clearly uncomfortable. In the morning, I was woken up very suddenly because I felt 2 hands grab my ankles and pull. With my eyes open, I began dragging off the bed. I started grabbing at anything to stop myself, and I was shouting. This woke me up, and my friend, he saw me hanging off the end of the bed with all the blankets. I thought at first he must be playing a joke somehow, but he was clearly woken up by me at just that moment. We were both very scared and confused. After this, he wanted to talk about ghosts, and he wanted to know if I really believed what just happened was supernatural. I think because he's an atheist and was struggling with some bad experiences in that apartment. Wow, that is pretty freaky. Pulled off the bed with the blankets. That is scary, man. I've never been pulled off the bed before. I've heard that from a decent number of people. It's actually pretty rare, but it's common enough where I've heard it probably a dozen times. Zach Bagans has a pulled off the bed story. I don't know the details, other than on one of his episodes of Deadly Possessions, he shows his skull collection, or a partial. He apparently owns many human skulls legally, and clearly some of them are haunted. He has them at his haunted museum for the purposes of making the place more haunted. And he said one particular human skull he brought home to his house. And I can only exaggerate or elaborate. He probably just put it on the dresser or the table, whatever the case. He put it in his bedroom probably. And he said in the middle of the night he was pulled off his bed by an invisible entity. Very freaky. So very similar to that story, except in that story you didn't bring a human skull home. You were just visiting a friend and I guess staying in the attic. Attics are very commonly places where spirits love to hang out. Now, why do spirits like to hang out in the attic or the basement? I'll tell you why. Spirits love having their own space. It's as simple as that. There's no magic recipe for the attic and the basement, other than humans don't hang out in the attic very often, and humans don't hang out in the basement very often. So 99% of the time, the basement is unoccupied, therefore abandoned from the perspective of a spirit. The same with the attic. The same with an abandoned house in the middle of a field, miles from a power line. Spirits will prefer to have their own structure, to live in it like a human, to act like a human, and to say, hey, this is mine. This is my place. Yeah. They have very human mindset when it comes to owning their own house. And clearly spirits don't have to pay rent, so when they see an abandoned attic or abandoned basement, they go into it. There are actually some ancient religious of a particular religion. I can't even mention the name because last time I did, karate chopping from a digital perspective took place. But of this particular persuasion of a theology of this or that, there is a belief that there was an ancient religious leader who said, hey, leave the people alone, quit haunting them, quit bothering them, quit harassing them. And the spirit said, hey, but where will we go? We don't have a place. Where can we go? And that religious leader said, you can go to the abandoned buildings in the woods. Just, if it's abandoned, you can have it. But where there are people residing, you can't have it. And this is an ancient folklore, an ancient folk tale. I can't confirm whether it's true or not, but some of it has some truth to it, because it seems like someone gave these spirits permission to occupy abandoned locations. I'm not even of that particular persuasion, but I find the story compelling. Even though it's a folk tale, there's some truth to it. Where there is smoke, there's fire. But if you go to abandoned insane asylum in the middle of nowhere from the 40s, and you walk down the halls, in my personal belief, you're not going to come across spirits of the dead humans that lived. You're not going to come across ghosts of humans that lived and died in that insane asylum. You're going to come across spirits that saw an empty building and moved in. And most definitely, residual energy could draw a certain type of spirit. They're probably not going to be the most holy of sanctified pure spirit if they're hanging out at some really dingy place with a lot of graffiti and pentagrams all over the wall. They're probably going to be of a darker persuasion. But totally unrelated spirits that had nothing to do with a particular building are going to move in because they love to have their own location. That is something I know from first-hand experience. I've heard about it before I started ghost hunting, but I didn't know it was true or not. But I'm definitely going to put it in my ghost hunting guide because it's a tip that is true. Now, it comes with the scary factor of, maybe there's a hobo living in there. Maybe there's some scary people living in there. Scope the place out in the daytime. Go with friends. Be safe. Don't go into condemned buildings that are going to collapse. Make sure it's a safe environment. I've heard of ghost investigators walking in abandoned places, and then the elevator shaft door was wide open, and there's no elevator there anymore, and they fell to their untimely death. Very sad story. But ghost investigators have died looking through the little screen, not knowing what's around the place. You got to scope it out in the daytime. Go with friends. Don't go in any condemned buildings, but spirits don't care about condemned buildings, and they will definitely hang out in anything that's abandoned. So I can tell you a secret before this video's over. I have a very radical theory on spirits. I've never heard anyone mention it. But I think there are actual groups of spirits congregating and hanging out and doing stuff, planning whatever they're doing. I'm not going to blow it into any type of grand design of any this or that. I don't even like to use the C word, but because there's a target on people that use the C word. But spirits gathering, congregating in abandoned locations so they can have some physical impact on this world. They don't even naturally exist in this dimension. They're in a higher dimension. They have to drop down into our dimension, and some of them, for some reason or another, or maybe all of them, maybe they just have a lot of restraint, but they can showcase their poltergeist abilities. And I think they test out their poltergeist abilities in an abandoned location where humans aren't watching. So, I don't know, man. If I had unlimited resources, unlimited funds, I would probably buy abandoned locations across the world, put up a bunch of cameras, and just sit back and see if anything happens on those cameras. I'm curious if Zach Bagans gets amazing ghost footage on his security cameras at his haunted museum. What does he do with all this haunted footage? You would think there is like 1,000 hours of... Wow. Okay, speaking of the haunted museum, Zach Bagans is a huge fan of Ghostbusters, and even though this is just a prop from the Spirit Ghost Halloween store, Zach Bagans owns the very real one. He bought the actual hero ghost trap from Ghostbusters, and he brought it over to the haunted museum, and you can see it now. I'm not advertising it. I've never been there. When I go to Vegas, I'm most definitely going to check out the haunted museum. You can't take photographs inside, yet he has a bunch of cameras in every corner of every room. But I understand why he doesn't allow cameras, because spirits don't like cameras. That's why. Spirits don't like... Well, at the same time, he doesn't want flash photography ruining his $1 million worth of artifacts. Maybe there's various reasons, but generally speaking, haunted attractions are usually hands-off when it comes to photographs. The same with the Winchester Mystery House. But Zach Bagans owns the actual hero prop from Ghostbusters. It'll be pretty cool to see that. He has that on display at the Haunted Museum, and I want to check it out. But I'm curious if, in the middle of the night, when no one's looking, if the ghosts at the Haunted Museum play with the ghost trap hero prop from the movie, and they play with the doors, and they just play with the doors all night, and they break it, and they break. I mean, I heard he paid like $300,000 for a few Ghostbusters movie prop items, including Egon's jumpsuit and the hero ghost trap. Concerning hero ghost traps, or I mean just regular ghost traps, I have a lot of beliefs and opinions, and I personally don't think you can trap a ghost anywhere. I don't think you can trap a ghost in a bottle. That is a belief. The ghost in a bottle thing, that's a belief in, I think, Haitian voodoo, and I think even Santeria. Some Santeria practitioners might believe that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've heard both Santeria and Haitian voodoo practitioners. They do believe you can put, and yeah, I did read about that in the Spider and the Green Butterfly book, that they believe you can pull the essence out of your body and put it in a bottle, and you can do the same thing with a random spirit. But I think a spirit can walk through a wall, can walk through a bottle, can walk through a ghost trap, and obviously it's just Hollywood. But even though spirits can walk through walls, they prefer to walk through the corner of the room. You know, this was chirping earlier. It was interesting. But we're going to be ending pretty soon. Stay tuned. More episodes coming soon. We have 6 more minutes. I'll check to see if anyone has any comments. I hope that this worked. OBS Studio. It's the first time I ever used it live for YouTube. It was actually easier than I thought it would be, and I didn't have to use the convoluted million options. I just go to the live streaming page, Stream Now, and then I plugged in the old stream key, and it worked. It's a free program. I'm not plugging it, not advertising it. And, you know, I have read a couple poltergeist books, but it bummed me out when this guy talks about poltergeist stories, and then he says, it's just of the mind, just of the mind. And I'll give you one example of how it can't be of the mind. There's one story in this book, The Poltergeist Experience, Investigation and Ghostly Phenomena by D. Scott Rogo. One story, he says there was like a vampire bat or whatever. There's some type of biting poltergeist that bit everyone in the house. It would bite their arms. And even when the investigators were there, they did see it happen. Is it possible one of the family members were doing it? I guess, if it was the sickest joke in the world, but what happened was just bite marks would appear of two fangs, kind of like Dracula, biting these people, and there would be disgusting, like, spit around the bite. And he said a poltergeist did it. So that's one of the more fantastical stories. But then he said it's of the mind. How do you get bite marks and spit on your arm from your mind? He repeats, I believe, the water poltergeist from this book. The water poltergeist was a poltergeist. At least that's the term that was used. It's more like some type of water ghost. It's more like an elemental of some spirit, nature of just water-obsessed spirit that could teleport water. That's the type of thing you can't believe unless you see it with your own eyeballs. Even I don't believe it. But it was reported. Investigators showed up at a house where water would appear out of the walls. And they got guys to get giant hammers to break those walls open to see if there was a pipe. And there was nothing. There was no pipe. And water would appear out of the walls. And he would like shoot in shooting streams of water. And every time they broke the wall open, there was no pipes and there was no source of the water. And gallons and gallons of water appeared out of nowhere. Very strange. But they said every time the water was about to appear, they would hear a popping sound, a very loud popping sound. Some type of weird teleportation technology. Very unusual, very strange. Those are not the typical ghost stories, the biting and the water, but those are just two examples of how is that of the mind. How does your mind teleport water? How does your mind bite your own arm and have spit on your arm? But those are two physical examples. There actually are many more. There are many more physical examples. I just can't remember. And I didn't finish this book. I got enough through where I realized he's talking about psychokinesis over and over and over. I'll just read this right here. Page 105. It often seems, in fact, as though the poltergeist most actively persecutes the very person who gives it birth. Eleanor Zugan even used psychokinesis to stick pins in herself. Yeah, I don't think so. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. If you're diehard in the realm of psychokinesis, I understand you're never going to change your mind. But I could just tell you a typical day. I would come home from work in 2011, rented a haunted room. I would turn on a video game, and I would play it. And I would hear a spirit sit to the right of me, watch me play the video game. And I knew the spirit was there because I heard it previously enter the room in the corner of the room with very loud creaks. And it would let me know it's there by knocking over objects. I can even show you some of the objects I actually owned in the actual room. Let me grab this. Let's hope my audio still works. Does my audio still work? Whew, thank goodness. I owned this exact pencil holder or cup or whatever you want to call it in the 2011 Poltergeist room. And even though it's really dingy and cruddy and there's nothing special about it, it's just a plastic cup that I paid 50 cents for at a thrift store. It still has the 50 cents label on it. And, whatever has the date. No. Anyway, I owned this in the 2011 room. And the spirit, I believe there were 2 poltergeists, would do stuff like this. They would even knock it over and proceed to throw out individually one item at a time. And then he would go to another location and, sit down and watch me play a video game. And the reason I wouldn't have been alerted is because I'd already experienced it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We're talking about 1,000 times, probably. I estimate 1,000 plus times. In front of my eyes, I saw poltergeist activity. The first 20 times, I was startled. I was freaked out. But 30 times in, 40 times in, 50 times, 165 days in a row, I was saying, hey, you ain't paying rent. Chime down. I tried not to converse with it because I didn't want to have any dialogue. I was not a ghost investigator. I wasn't interested in ghosts. I was interested in Back to the Future and time travel theories. I wasn't into ghosts in any way, shape, or form. But I see that we have come to 12:01 a.m. and I appreciate you watching my Halloween live stream. I did my best. Next time I'll try to have more interesting stories ready to go. Next time I will have my Poltergeist book, which is missing. It's around here somewhere. More videos coming soon. Stay tuned. I appreciate my viewers, my subscribers. Feel free to subscribe and like. Mysterialis Ghost Investigation is still in effect. I'm going to make more t-shirts. It's not about the t-shirts. It's about getting evidence. But I like designing t-shirts. I've been in art classes many times, and I always get an A+. And I'm going to try to make some really good designs. Hopefully help this channel out, because this channel's views go in one direction, and I try to do something else to make it interesting. This booklet is coming soon. It's going to be just a staple together. And I'm going to make 100 copies. And if those 100 copies sell, when those 100 copies sell, it'll motivate me to either make a second edition, or maybe I'll print 100 more copies. Maybe I'll print 400 copies. Whatever the case. But I can't afford to print my Corners of Rooms book. The real book, A to Z, the true story of my poltergeist haunting from 2011. And I notice it's a big business to be haunted these days. There are a lot of people that make up fake stories just to get a movie script or something, get Hollywood interested. My story isn't even interesting from a Hollywood perspective. If my story was turned into a movie, it would be me playing a video game and a demon poltergeist spirit sitting next to me watching me. And me going, because after a while you get used to it. I'm almost more freaked out years later than when it happened, because you think about it. You think about it over and over and over, and I tweet about it too much, and I think about it too much. But it was a life-changing event. It actually happened. It's a true story. I have many, many theories on poltergeists, why they chose me, why they bothered me. And residually, small stuff happens. We haven't gotten any huge amounts of evidence, but I didn't invite any spirits to hang out. I didn't have any intention on having any spirits be here. But the stream has to end. I thank you for watching. Perhaps we can open up live chat next time. Perhaps we can have guests next time. Let me just do a real quick experiment. Does it work if I move this? Oh. Does that put me in the corner? Live. Can you see that live, me put in the corner? If so, I can fit four screens. And if that's the case, I can have guests on a future live stream. So stay tuned. I appreciate my subscribers, my viewers, supporters. Check me out on Instagram, ghost.hunting. On Twitter, @Razimus, Razimus@gmail.com. Stay tuned. More episodes coming soon. Mystery Isles Ghost Investigation, MGI. Be seeing you. Thank you for watching.